baby! So I mentioned very quickly in the outro of my video last week that we had just found out on Tuesday of this week that we are having a baby boy. Whew. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago during the big baby announcement, I said I was kind of nervous about the idea of having a girl because I grew up around my brothers and I didn't really spend time with little girls my age and all that kind of thing, and I think teenage girls are terrifying, and so I was like, what am I going to do if I have a girl? It's going to be awful. Or, I just felt unprepared. And so now we know we're having a boy, and I, obviously either way would have been fantastic, and, maybe down the road, maybe the next one's a girl or something like that, and that would be great. But I can say that now that I know it's a boy, there's some exciting things that lay ahead of me, and already, I'm thinking about very specific memories I have from being young. I have some memories from when I was 2 and 3 years old. I remember my brothers being baptized. I remember being in the bathtub. I remember, little games like on the floor with my dog, because I had a golden retriever that was, my parents basically got the same time I was born, and so he kind of grew up with me, and I remember him being more of a puppy, and I remember him getting bigger, and that was all really cool. So anyway, all I'm saying is because I specifically some very strong memories of my father when I was very young, it's kind of exciting now to think about the kind of legacy situation that can go on there, where it's like, oh, I can pass things down now to my son that my father passed on to me, and there's something kind of beautiful about that. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I'll just tell you this one thing, is I remember laughing so hard when I was taking a bath as a kid over this thing my dad would do, with my brothers too, like all of us could fit in the tub when I was like 3 and they were all 1 or whatever, but we'd all be in the tub, and we had a little stuffed Kermit doll that he would put on top of the faucet, and we'd all be in the bathtub, and he'd be like, okay, Kermit, stay right there. And of course, it's just a little doll, so it falls over, and he'd be like, Kermit, I told you to stay. Now, Kermit, get back up there. Now, stay there, and don't move, Kermit. And then we'd be like, Dad, or we'd call him Papa, the Kermit's falling, Kermit's falling. He'd be like, oh, Kermit, and he'd try to catch him or something. And it would be this thing that we could just do this for 20 minutes, and we'd be laughing hysterically the whole time. It made us so happy. And, it's a little things like that where I'm just so excited for the little milestones where I can be like, oh, I can introduce this to my son now, and little things like that. And of course I think about, oh, I'm going to teach him how to throw a ball and all that kind of stuff. And, oh, I'm going to show him his first video game. And video games real quick. I am excited about the idea of taking a child, and this is obviously regardless of boy or girl or whatever, but because video games have come so long so quickly, it's very important to me that my child has an appreciation of that. And so I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off, but when the age is right, I just want to say that I'm really excited about the idea of taking my child through the history of video games. Like, I want them to start by playing like an 8-bit game, eventually go 16-bit, 32-bit, play maybe like a DOS game or two. I'll use emulators, play on my Game Boy. I still got my Game Boy, that works great. Eventually move up to like an NES, PlayStation 2, and I want them to see and appreciate how the graphics and the mechanics and the gameplay and the storytelling investment and narrative have grown and developed over the years, and in some ways how things have not necessarily gotten worse, but changed and become different. And there are certain qualities, I think, to the earlier, simpler games that you just don't get out of a newer game that's all about basically being a interactive movie. So that's something that I'm excited to share. On Tuesday, when we saw the ultrasound right before we were told that, it was a boy, it was exciting because we saw, like, the bone structure. And, the last time I saw the ultrasound was when it was just a little bean. And now, there's bones, and we can see the heart beating, and the organs developing, and the brain, and the skull, and all that. And first of all, there was this very kind of, like, that little squirrel gif thing, where it kind of like looked right at us, or right at the camera for a second, which is great, but also seeing the feet. And it's amazing how much my wife has been kicked, by our child so far, which is still pretty young. And when we saw the feet, we saw those like pretty wide feet, and I'm thinking, you got my feet. See, I got... See, I don't have particularly big feet, but I do have very wide feet. It's kind of a hobbit feet thing going on. And so it's like, that's why my wife feels it, because they're very wide feet, even if they're not kicking very hard. It's a pretty strong sensation. I also went to Babies R Us for the first time in my life yesterday. That was kind of interesting to actually see, aisle after aisle of diapers and strollers and bassinets and cradles and all that kind of thing. And of course, my only association with the RS franchises is I remember being a kid in Toys R Us, and everything seemed, because I was tiny, so huge, and like, look at all the toys and amazing. And I was trying to figure out if this store had the same structure as a Toys R Us, but just with baby stuff. And maybe it felt like more of a department store, but then that got me thinking maybe my memories of Toys R Us are very colored by the fact that I was tinier, and so the shelves of toys looked like they were 30 feet tall and that kind of thing. But anyway, Babies R Us was fascinating because we were able to do things like test out strollers, and I could get a sense of, how do the tires feel and how easily does the little seat come out and that kind of thing. And my wife really likes one, which I now like too, that is very easy to fold up and is very easy to take the seat out and make it become a car seat. So that's very handy because say you have a baby that's sleeping and you suddenly go into the car and you have to take it out of the stroller. If you have to actually unstrap it and everything, chances are it's going to wake up. But if you can keep it in the seat and pull it out and put it in the car, maybe it stays asleep. So that's kind of exciting. And it's kind of fascinating now to start thinking about the logistics of a child and how you do things like that, like keeping them asleep. And we're like, oh, look, the seat that comes out, it rocks back and forth ever so gently. And of course, there's extremes of that. There's like the very expensive cradles that it's almost like a massage chair where there's like 12 vibration settings. It's like, do you want a swirly rocking? Do you want an up and down, wavy rocking? And that stuff seems a little bit ridiculous to me. But so are any industry at all. There's going to be thousands of products that no one has any real use for, but there will always be someone saying, that sounds really fun, let me get that. The thing that astounds me right now, which I wasn't familiar with, and I'm sure this will continue to astound me over the coming months, is how expensive baby clothes are. A shirt like this shirt, $5 or whatever, and then you find the same equivalent shirt to something like this. There are button-down shirts for babies, by the way, and a little tiny shirt takes this much space is like $30, and what a racket. Is there some kind of like internet company conspiracy here where like all the companies that make baby things got together and were like, look guys, I know it's really cheap to produce this stuff, but people really need this and they're gonna pay top dollar for it, so we should just charge really high exorbitant prices, and maybe that's why there's no one out there charging the reasonable like $4 prices for little baby clothes and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's kind of interesting. We actually also went from Babies R Us to bowling for a birthday party, which was kind of interesting because you might think like, oh, bowling, that's not a good thing to do when you're pregnant. And I just want to say, my wife bowled really well. Maybe there's something going on there with like the extra, balance or something, but she had some great strikes and we all did well. None of us, are super fantastic bowlers, but bowling's fun. And if you're curious, yeah, a pregnant woman can bowl well. Just make sure that if you're thinking of taking a pregnant woman bowling, just make sure that they're using a lighter ball. You don't want anything that's too heavy, okay? Great.